Nice to be with everybody. So yes, we are in March, and this is a seasonal change for us in Ayurveda. We're moving out of the winter months where we bring in more nourishment, kind of more what we would probably think of as comfort. And in spring, it's time to kind of enliven our tissue and shed off some of that nourishment that we might have accumulated over winter. And from an Ayurvedic perspective, we're always following the seasons, and spring is the ideal time to shed some of what we don't need in our physical body. So winter is about the dosha kapha, and kapha is about the elements of earth and water, which are both pretty heavy elements when you compare them with the other five of space and air and fire. Earth and water are definitely on the heavier side. So we've been accumulating this, hopefully, in a nourishing way to build good, healthy tissue. But it's hard to get it just right. We tend to accumulate a little more than we need. And then spring comes, and we naturally have an opportunity, a great window to let go of some of that. And I'm going to talk to you today about how we can do that together in a detox, a very gentle Ayurvedic detox that lasts for 3 days. And just in general, how we can apply some of these principles in spring and take advantage of what nature's offering us. Spring, the qualities are lightness. So the tastes that we have, the kinds of food that we eat, the lifestyle practices that we bring in is about bringing more light qualities. So we're lightening things up. And as this is happening, the weather is warming, and we have a little bit of this concept that we call kapha melting, which we often experience as a little bit of dripping, maybe postnasal drip or extra sneezing. Sometimes you might tend to get a cold or even hay fever or allergies in spring, or you might just feel a little extra heaviness in the body. And this is that concept of kapha melting with the weather warming up. So we just have a little bit of moisture that needs to shed out of our tissue, and it needs somewhere to go. If it doesn't have somewhere productive to go, then it shows up usually in our lungs and our nasal passage as this congestion, but sometimes as heaviness in our tissue also. Just depends. We're all individuals, and it shows up differently. Or you might not feel it at all, but there usually is still a little bit of accumulation there, even if you're not feeling it. So we bring in these lighter qualities, and we bring in specific things that help let that fluid, let that heaviness and that wetness kind of dissipate in a more natural way so that we don't feel it as discomfort or a liability in our body. And one of the ways we do this is with the detox. It's kind of a kickstart. But then there's also just more gentle ways we can accomplish that too. So you're going to get some material with this recording. You're going to get a shopping list. You're going to get a protocol for this detox, and you're going to get some recipes. So with this protocol, you'll see that there are some indicators that you might have some of this heaviness in the body, and you can read through those and evaluate for yourself if you feel this extra heaviness, if you have some of these symptoms and you're carrying a little bit more extra into the spring season that you don't need. And really, it's not just getting rid of this excess for spring. It actually feeds from one season to another. So when we do the appropriate protocols for one season, we feel better, not just in the next season, but really throughout the rest of the year, because every season is building on the past seasons. So you can look at it in terms of if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not paying attention to how our body's working with the rhythms of nature, then we might be building some unhealthy habits and carrying some liability from season to season and even year to year. And then the opposite is true. If you are taking care of yourself, then you're actually building health from season to season and year to year. So I'm going to talk to you about making things lighter, just some general topics. And these are things, if you choose not to do the protocol, you can do these throughout spring and you're going to get a lot of benefit just by doing these. So, the name of what we do in spring to lighten up, the Ayurvedic word is called langanam. And that word means to mindfully make light. And I really want to stress the mindfully part because I think it's important to be doing this detox from a very mindful perspective. There's a lot of detoxes and cleanses out there, and they're often recommended just as a bodily cleanse. But this is really an opportunity to do a deeper reset. So just staying really mindful of why you're doing this detox, of how you're feeling, and being really gentle and kind and compassionate with yourself as you're doing this detox. So bringing in this concept of sattva is an important aspect to it. Bringing nature in is also, Shunyaji is always encouraging us to spend time in nature, to pay attention to nature. Can really help us move through different transitions, and this is a transition that we're going through. To be very nurturing to ourselves. This is a time to maybe spend a few quiet days when we're doing the detox, where you don't have a lot of activities going on, and you can just give yourself a lot of nurturing in these recipes that you're going to eat, but also in how you spend your time these 3 days. So you might want to do something like get a journal and actually spend some time processing how this detox works for you, not just on a physical level, but maybe emotionally, maybe witnessing yourself as you're going through the Vedic way, So thoughts, that is one of the ways we can lighten up. We want to do the detox, not when we're carrying heavy thoughts, but we kind of want to lighten up our thought process during this because our thoughts also have to get digested, just like all the food that we eat. So if we have heavy thoughts, it impacts our digestion. I think we all know that. Abstaining from heavier things. So in winter, we eat more nourishing food. And now we're going to step away from those more nourishing foods and we're going to go to some lighter foods. In spring, actually, nature provides a lot of the foods that are more appropriate for us in the spring season. So it's a really good time to go to the farmer's market. If you're not familiar with what like the spring vegetables in your locale really are, the farmer's market's a great way to get in touch with that. Because if you go to the supermarket, you're going to see everything because everything's imported. But there's some particular vegetables that have more astringent taste and have more bitter taste, mustard greens and radishes, a little more pungent taste. And those are naturally being provided for us in spring. So those are the kinds of vegetables we want to go for. And we really don't have a lot of fruit in spring. Nature doesn't provide a lot of fruit in spring. It's not the season for it. So we do step away from fruit a little bit more. And then oiling. We talked about abhyanga a few months ago. So if you are doing oiling during this 3 days of detox, you can abstain from that. We're giving our body a break from having to digest anything extra. And we're giving it very, very easy, light, easy to digest food. And we don't want to tax it by adding oil on our skin because our body has to digest that oil to take it in. So we step away from that kind of oiling, and we also step away from snacking. So, you're going to have plenty of food to eat. And we'll talk about if you get hungry during the detox, but we're not going to do maybe like a mid-morning or an afternoon, and definitely not a late night snack. If you're in the habit of doing that, we're going to step away from that until the spring season is over. And then in terms of our schedule, we want to pay attention to meal timing. We want them to be regular, and the meal times are recommended in the detox protocol. You just do the best you can, but you don't want to have random eating. And also sleep is very important during this time. So if we've fallen away from some of our health hygiene practices, our dinacharya, we call it in Ayurveda, which is kind of natural for one reason or another, we often get off our scheduled routine. And this is a great opportunity to just get back on it, to kind of reboot the things that we know are good for us that we might not be doing. And then no cold fluids or food. This is a really important one in spring. We're giving our digestion this break. With this warmer weather, our Agni, our digestive fire, is a little bit dampened. It's like we want it to be like a dry flame that's kindled, and it's a little bit like a wet paper bag with all this dampness, this wet that's shedding off of us. So cold quality in Ayurveda is heavy, and we want to step away from heavy. So we're going to have warm food, and we're going to have warm fluids. So that means sipping warm water when you're thirsty, and maybe having digestive tea, which there's a recipe in the protocol. You can have that all spring. So try not to have cold foods and fluids. And then chewing our food really well. Chewing is really important. We want to maybe just slow down our eating in general. Just we could use these 3 days as a time to be very mindful in our eating. But chewing actually starts the digestive process. We start releasing enzymes in our mouth when we're chewing our food that we swallow when we've chewed our food properly. So it's really important. This food actually doesn't require a lot of chewing, these 3 recipes, but we can kind of pretend. And then exercise, moving in the body. Spring is a time to get moving in our body, whatever is appropriate for you. So that might be more rigorous exercise. This is the ideal time to do more rigorous exercise. Ayurveda does not recommend that all year, but it really recommends it in spring. Or gentle yoga, or just going for a gentle walk and stretching, whatever is appropriate for you. Taking 100 steps after every meal is recommended. That's kind of not supposed to be an optional thing. You should take 100 steps after every meal. And that's a general good Ayurvedic guideline to aid digestion. That's really not about exercise. That's about digestion. But in spring, it's definitely recommended all throughout spring. It's a really, really good idea. Even if you're just getting up and doing the dishes, that can probably count for 100 steps. But just some movement walking around after you eat the meal. And then Soumya is going to review a really excellent pranayama with you that's called Kapalabhati. This is a pranayama that invigorates the tissue. She'll explain it in detail, but it is the pranayama that's recommended for spring. So that's a great thing to do. So all of these can be done all of spring, and they'll be very, very beneficial. So you're going to be provided a shopping list, and I just want to go over a few of the foods on the shopping list because they might not be familiar to everybody. The first is rock salt, Himalayan rock salt. So this is the salt that is recommended in Ayurveda. Comes from the Himalayas. It's not sea salt, which is not a bad salt, but rock salt is particularly recommended during the detox. And it's a great salt to have in your pantry if you don't have it already. And I think you can pretty much find it in all grocery stores now. And it is actually pink, so it's really easy to recognize. And then there's this thing called hing or asafoetida, and it's, I think, only used in Indian cooking. I've never seen it anywhere else. It's a resin that comes from a plant, and it's usually, you get it ground down in a powdered form. You probably have to get that online or go to an Indian or Middle Eastern shop. And just want to give you a heads up. It has a unique smell that's not necessarily pleasant when you take the lid off it and you're cooking with it. That smell does not transplant into the food. It goes away when you cook it. But it's particularly helpful to aid digestion. So if you know you're okay with mung soup, maybe you can leave that out in general. It is recommended for the spring detox. And it's some people have a hard time digesting moon, and it will make it so much easier. It's really amazing. So it's kind of a magic ingredient in that regard. Um, Milk, we recommend whole organic milk. There's a recipe for spiced milk, and that's what the milk is used for. So try to get good quality milk. And then yogurt is also recommended, and that's really optional. If you are familiar with Ayurvedic buttermilk, which is called takra, that can be used during the detox if you need a little extra digestive aid. Also, it's not going to be in the recipes, but if you're familiar with it, you can make takra and have that with your meals. And then honey. Honey is a really magic ingredient in spring. We generally stay away from the sweet taste in spring because it does have heaviness. But honey is its own unique food, and it has this special scraping action that's really beneficial for spring. And that actually is the only thing that's allowed as a really healthy snack in spring. Um, and you can have up to a few teaspoons a day. So don't have it during the 3-day protocol, but you can have it in spring in general. Um, and we really look for honey that is organic and that has not been refined. If honey has been heated and refined, it changes the quality of it, and we no longer consider it beneficial. So try to find really good quality honey, good local sources like farmers markets or people who are just growing really in touch with their bees and they don't want their honey ruined by heating it. If you can find some of those sources, that's really great. And older honey is actually better than newer honey, aged honey. So if it has those crystals in it, that's actually a really good thing. It means it hasn't been heated and it has some age on it. So if you have an old jar of honey in your cupboard and it has those crystals or it's gone brown a little bit, that's totally fine. That's actually good honey. So those are just some non-standard items. And then the last one I'll mention, if you're not familiar with mung beans, they come in 3 different ways. You can get split yellow mung beans, which are just yellow. You can get whole mung beans, which are green and whole, or you can get green split mung beans. So the difference is when it has any amount of green on it, it still has the hull on it. And the hull is actually more difficult to digest, but the hull actually has a lot of benefit to it also. So if you know that you can eat the whole mung beans or the split green mung beans, you can go ahead and buy those. If you're not familiar with what mung beans you digest best, then I would recommend getting the yellow split. So those don't have any hull on them, and they cook a little faster, and they're just easier for our system to digest. So they're your safest bet. Okay, and then the protocol. So you're going to get recipes for 3 days, 3 different recipes, and they're basically 2 soups and a stew. And they have some spices in them. And then the first day is a rice soup. The second day is a mung bean soup. And the third day has both rice and mung beans in it. And it's a little more dense and it's more like a stew. So some of the unusual things that we do with these protocol recipes is that we soak mung beans always before we cook them to make them more digestible, but we also soak the rice to make it more digestible. So before you go to bed the night before you're going to cook one of these recipes, you want to soak that ingredient before you go to bed so that it's had that time to kind of pre-digest a little bit. And then you're going to do something that's also a little unique. You're going to dry roast either the rice or the moon beans. So in the morning or after you've soaked these, um, strain them, and then I usually dump them out on a towel and dry them off a little bit, and then put them in the hot pan that you're going to cook your soup in, and just move them around and just we call it dry roasting. So the rice will go from a little bit translucent looking to more opaque looking and kind of white. And you'll also start to smell the aroma a little bit of it. So it's kind of like dry roasting if you make risotto. It's a similar process. And you'll start to smell the aroma of the rice a little bit. And that means that it's ready to go ahead. You can add your water to it. And this also just helps it make a little bit more digestible. So we're giving our Agni a break wherever we can by doing these extra steps, these 3 days. What else did I say about soup? So you want to make fresh soup every day. Probably make one batch. You can make 2 batches if you have the time. If you don't have the time, then it's okay to make one in the morning and have that all day. We're going to aim to do this together on the weekend of the 17th, 18th, and 19th. So that's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that gives you about 10, 11 days to do the shopping. You might need to order some things online. And then we'll give you some prompts on the forum to get ready to do it all together. And if you have questions, please feel free to ask and we'll get you answers. But it'd be nice to do it as a community and maybe have some shares around it. And this is a great thing too, if there's anyone in your household that wants to join you, it's really nice to do it together. It's a little hard to do it when you're the only one in your household doing it and people are eating other meals. So you might want to explain to them that this is important to you and ask them to help you honor your few days of this. So some of the other recipes, there's a cardamom, cumin, fennel tea. So this is a digestive tea that you have during the detox. It's tasty. These recipes are also tasty. You can add lime and cilantro on the soups. So this isn't about deprivation. This is about nourishment. So this isn't, it's not about abstaining from food. It's about giving your digestion a break and nourishing it at the same time. So really want to reinforce that just try to surround yourself with these thoughts of nourishment. And if you are feeling particularly hungry, you can go ahead and have some spiced milk. There'll be a recipe for that also. There's spices in it, so it's milk and it's heavy, but the spices help balance that. So that's something if you have an earlier dinner, which we recommend, and you're really hungry in the evening, you could have some spiced milk. And just as you're easing out of these 3 days, you can continue to do the protocol up to 7 days. And the way that you finish it is you have khichdi. So you kind of ease off those 3 days into something called khichdi that probably many of you are familiar with already. And it's very similar to the stew that you make the last day. And there'll be a recipe for this also. You can just have khichdi for the rest of that week and continue your detox. You can have khichdi and you can start to put vegetables in it to make it more interesting. So, let it kind of unfold in a way that works for you, and gently. Don't go back to just eating a standard diet abruptly after doing the 3-day detox. Maybe when if you do khichdi for a few more days, then maybe even have a regular meal once a day and then khichdi for your other 2 meals and slowly integrate into it. And if you're really into it, you can continue to do the khichdi once a day throughout spring, and that'll be really beneficial. So khichdi is just a excellent food in Ayurveda. It's our standard reset food if you're not feeling well, if your digestion's gotten a little funky, if you've been on vacation and you've overindulged and you kind of want to reset, then we come back and have khichdi for a day or two, and it kind of cleanses your palate, all the attachments that we get to the different flavors in our mouth, and gives our digestion a break, gives our bowels a break. It makes them very regular. You want to make sure you stay very regular during this detox time also. So some of the other recommendations that we made will help with that. The movement, Kapalabhati, all of these support keeping regular bowel movements, which is always an important part of Ayurveda. And what to expect. You shouldn't expect to feel uncomfortable. This should you should feel nourished. You should enjoy eating the meals. Um, you shouldn't feel overly uncomfortably hungry at all. So don't expect to feel uncomfortable from this. And you might feel tired. Yeah, you might have something like a headache. You might feel really energized, so just keep an open mind. Be ready to be the witness to your experience here.